Welcome, everybody, to Rise, Empower, Dream, a podcast that's been created to uplift, inspire, and empower you to step out of your fear and comfort zones and into your power and greatness. I'm Camila Durand, your host. And today I have with me a very, very badass woman. She is Rishma Khimji, and she joined the Clark County Department of Aviation back in 2022 as the department's first Chief Information Technology Officer. She brings more than 2 decades worth of information technology experience, including more than a decade in the public sector. In this role, she will oversee the development, implementation, and maintenance of all information technology for Harry Reid International Airport here in Las Vegas and its four sister general aviation airports. I told you she was a badass. Her portfolio will also include strategy and innovation development. Most recently, having served as the Chief Information Officer for the San Francisco Police Department, Khimji also brings to CCDOA her leadership and technology experience with the Albuquerque Police Department, as well as the city of Reno. Throughout her career, she has implemented many high-profile projects to enhance municipal services, resources, and accountability. Khimji is a two-time graduate of University of New Mexico, having earned a bachelor's degree in computer science and economics, as well as a master's degree in economics. Wow. She was born in Calgary, Alberta, and raised in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where she still has family. In her free time, she enjoys cooking and traveling. Welcome, Rishma. Oh my God, you do have free time to cook and travel?
Well, cooking is a necessity, and in traveling, it's getting there. We're getting back into it.
Oh my God, what an honor it is that you took time out of your busy schedule. I didn't realize how busy you were until I read your bio. So thank you so much for being here today and sharing your light, your wisdom, your knowledge with all our listeners and especially with the women out there.
No, thank you so much for asking me to be on. I feel very honored and privileged to be here. So excited about our conversation.
Wonderful. So can you tell me how you got started in this, this path, this journey with information, technology, economics? Tell me a little bit about how you got started.
Yeah, so I actually started college in the engineering field. I was hoping to get into biomedical engineering at some point, and so I started off as a chemical engineering student. And I think in my second year, I had a professor who actually pulled me aside and said, "Hey, I just want to kind of talk to you a little bit. I'm not sure you have the right personality to be an engineer." And I was kind of taken aback. And I said, "I don't know what that means." And he said to me, "Well, you're just too bubbly. You're too chatty. You don't seem level-headed, and you don't seem as focused as an engineer should be." And so that changed the trajectory of my life.
Mhm.
And to this day, I don't know if that's a good thing or if that's a bad thing, because I got out of engineering at that point. I was so
Mhm.
disheartened. And this was somebody who I thought was, a master in his field. He knew what he was saying, he knew what he was doing, and I took what he told me to heart. And so I transitioned to computer science at that point because I had taken some classes already. And then a really good friend of mine was taking some economic classes, and she convinced me to take one with her. And I took my first micro econ class, and I fell in love with the entire subject. And so I pivoted and went into computer science and economics because I wasn't really sure at that point anymore what I was going to do with my life, because
Mhm.
engineering was just the focus that I'd had since I was little. And then I graduated and I got a job in New York City. And I'm just going to tell you, from this point forward, it kind of felt like doors were just open for me.
Mhm.
And those were opportunities that I took, whether I was scared of them or not. And so I got this opportunity in New York City, and I moved there right after college and broke my dad's heart because he didn't want me to move away so far because he thought I
Mhm.
was too young. Um, but I moved to New York City with just two bags. Literally, I had two suitcases, my savings, and went on my way. And I ended up working for a couple of consulting firms, and then I got a job at the IBM. And that kind of set me up for the next path in my life. Unfortunately, I was there for 9/11, and that again changed the trajectory, I think, of
Mhm.
everybody's life at that point.
Yeah.
Um, my dad had a heart attack a few months after that. I got laid off a few months after that.
Hmm.
And so everything just collided again, and I was able to move back to Albuquerque, New Mexico at that point. And I got to be with my dad, who did not have a great um, prognosis at that time. The doctors were
Hmm.
like, we don't know how long he's going to live. His heart attack was severe enough. He was a diabetic. And so I got to go move back home. I'm a daddy's girl.
Yeah.
And from there, just kept moving into new positions that taught me new skill sets, which then set me up for that next level. And I'm one of those that kept looking for that next level, learned what I needed to learn, got to a point where I said, okay, what's next? And then found what was next and just kept moving up into where I am now, which is at this fabulous airport in Las Vegas.
And we met at an event last year was, I think, November or early December. And, just looking at you walk into that room, it's like you have such a strong presence, Rishma, and admirable. And now listening to your trajectory, like regardless of how scared you were of these moves or of the opportunities that showed up, like you said, regardless of the challenges that you faced, you just kept doing what's next. You kept going.
Yeah.
How was it to hear from the person that you admired, your professor, that engineering wasn't for you because of these wonderful qualities that you have that make up for who you are?
Uh, I really took it to heart and it really, really hurt my feelings, so much so that I gave up engineering.
Hmm.
And um, I now, when I reflect back on it, I realized how I let others influence me.
Hmm.
And I don't want that to happen anymore. And I don't want that to happen to other people. There's one way of giving critical feedback to somebody to say, hey, this might not be the pathway for you. Here are some strengths that I think would really allow you to succeed here on this path. But that's not the advice that I got, right? I was
Right.
basically told, you're not cut out to be an engineer because of my personality, not because of my smarts, not because of my tenacity, but because of my personality.
What I'm
And
what I'm hearing, just to interrupt you, is that
yeah,
you were too feminine to be
yeah,
an
maybe.
engineer. That's what I heard.
Yeah,
Too
yeah.
girly.
Too girly. And and it's the case, I think even today, the number of graduates, whether it's in engineering, it's in medicine, it's in any science-based education, the graduation rates for women is very low. I think it's progressively getting higher year by
Hmm.
year, but that percentage to men is still very low. And that might have been some of my professor's biases, just innately, that he was used to not having many women in his class, that he thought it was okay to say that to me.
Hmm.
And so now my credo is, if you want to do it, do it.
Oh, and you've
Don't
done
worry
it,
about,
girl.
yeah. Don't worry about your personality. You don't worry about whether you are a chatter or you're not a chatter, or, because in the end, you have to do what's right for you and your
Hmm.
goals, and you can't let someone else's biases influence that for you. And I wish I recognized that back then.
Yeah, and so I'm from the outside. This is the first time I've heard the story. And this is why I don't like to talk a lot before getting my guests on this podcast, is so I can be as surprised as my viewers. Um, but looking from the outside in, this guy did you a favor.
Maybe, right?
I mean,
I
I
mean,
mean, I that's how I see it because
sure.
looking at where you are now, like the journey you've been on and the difference you've made in the places that you've worked, this guy did you a favor, girl. It's like you rose and you're shining. You've been
Yeah.
shining all along since you left engineering.
Yeah, and I do recognize that, and I am thankful, very thankful for the
Hmm.
opportunities that I've gotten. I'm thankful for the drive that I have, that I kept pushing forward. Um, there's always going to be a part of me that wonders, what if I'd stayed in engineering? Where would I have gone with that, right? With the same tenacity, with the same attitude, with the same will and drive, would I have also succeeded in engineering to a different pathway, right? But I don't take away from the fact that I love my life. I love where I am. I love my job. I have an amazing team. I have great people who support and uplift me all the time. And I wouldn't trade that. But I wish I had the opportunity to recognize,
Hmm.
right, why I was being told something and then took that as a choice versus kind of being pushed into something else.
For sure. And I'm not going to ask you how old you are today, but in college, but in college, you were like in your teens, late teens or early 20s.
Yeah,
So we don't have that strong of a mindset yet.
yeah,
And you looked up to this person who kind of shattered your dreams.
yeah.
And then you're like, fuck it, I'm just gonna, you can say bad words. I mean, sailor's mouth here. Fuck it, I'm just gonna change, paths and see what happens because I believe in myself. And that is why I wanted to have you here because this podcast is all about inspiring, right? And so, regardless of the challenges that you faced, having, being laid off after 9/11, having all these opportunities that were presented to you, and you mentioned that you were scared and even though you went ahead and you did it, this just speaks volumes about you and your confidence and your tenacity, like you repeated. It's like, where does all this come from?
That's a really good question. I would say two places. One are my parents. So I grew up in a very immigrant family. And my father, as traditional as he was on one hand, was very non-traditional on the other. And what I mean by that is he expected traditional roles in the home, but he
Hmm.
didn't expect those traditional roles in the outside world. So,
Oh.
at home, yeah, I had to cook and clean and all that stuff, but I had to go to school. I had to do really well in school. I was expected to go to college. There was no, maybe I'll go or maybe no, you're going to college and we'll figure out how we're going to get you there,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And you're going to learn how to change your own tire, check your own battery in your car. You're going to be independent. You're going to have your own checking account. You're not, there was a lot of independence kind of taught to me. And my mother, being very independent as well, I learned that lesson closely at home. So, although she was a wife and a mother at home, she was a nurse, she was a friend, she was a huge advocate and volunteer at the mosque where we grew up. And so she was always doing things for others, but she was also making sure that she had her own independence.
Hmm.
She had her own checking account. She made her own money. She contributed to the home in an equitable manner, right? So her and
Hmm.
my father had, I don't know if it was innate to their marriage or if they had something that they had discussed at some point, but they contributed equitably, but they had their own as well. And so I think just growing up and seeing that, I learned the value of tradition
Hmm.
and some value for rituals because rituals really enrich your community, right? Brings you
Hmm.
together. But it also taught me that it's okay to be different, to look for better things, to strive for higher levels. And if it's being a woman that's in the way, figure it out and go around that mindset. And so it's taken me a while to learn that and to really recognize and appreciate that. But I think that drive was built into me since I was young.
Wow. A badass doesn't even begin to describe your Rishma.
Ah!
So share with us, please, some of the fears that you had throughout your journey. I'd love to hear about them.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest fears I have, and I have it today still, and it's something I battle with all the time, is is being able to support myself,
Hmm.
right? And I've always said money comes, money goes, because I grew up not rich. My parents were not rich by any means. We were, lower middle class. Um, I had for the first, I don't know, 12, 13 years of my life, I had hand-me-downs from cousins and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't come from money. And I knew my value for money is very different than I think my partners and maybe other people in my life. But for me, one of the fears I have of taking a risk is the loss of the ability to take care of myself. Will I make enough money to take care of myself? Will I make enough
Mm-hmm.
money to pay my bills? Will I make enough? There's some risk that you can take and it pays you back, but it's over time and maybe later,
Mm-hmm.
2, 3 years
Mm-hmm.
later of hustling and doing all the work and
Mm-hmm.
finding ways to make ends meet, but I don't want to just make ends meet. I want to be able to have a lifestyle where I can give back to others, where I can spoil my mom, or I can spoil my brother and my sister-in-law. I can spoil my partner. And so there's sometimes where I wonder, is the risk really worth the reward today of saying I wouldn't be able to do that, even though I know that money comes and goes? I don't know if that makes sense, but my
It
fear is,
does.
am I going to be able to take care of myself?
Even though you've been in high positions for years, that fear
Yeah,
then still exists today.
yeah, yeah,
And that is probably a huge reason why many people don't take the leap,
yeah,
why they don't really start living their dream. Because I know many people who feel that they are stuck in their lives, stuck in their jobs, stuck in their relationships, and they don't leave, they don't change course because they don't know, they're afraid they won't be able to take care of themselves.
yeah.
What what insight would you offer that made a difference to you to continue to take these risks and to make the changes and, take these risks, period? What
Yeah.
insights would you share with our listeners, with our viewers?
One way not to give power to fear is to plan how you're going to get to where you want to get, right? So knowing that the past few years I've moved a lot. I've moved from Albuquerque to Reno to San Francisco to Vegas. And moves are expensive. Taking on a new job can
Mm-hmm.
be uh, challenging, but there are opportunities. But knowing that I'm looking for a certain lifestyle as well, it's planning for that, right? Saying, okay, this is how much money I need to pay bills. This is how much money I need in some type of investment or savings to make me feel comfortable. And can I kind of toggle that up and down to say, this is my bare minimum and, this is where I'd like to
Mm-hmm.
go. But because I have a fear of not being able to take care of myself, I need to plan so that if I
Mm-hmm.
can't, I have a fallback, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
I think the fear will always be there
Mm-hmm.
and I have to acknowledge that the fear will always be there. But if I can plan and have options, right, then I know that I'm going to be okay because if option one doesn't work, I already have option two and three created and in the works, right? So, if you want to understand and keep moving forward, don't let the fear don't let the fear kind of strangle you and make you immobile, but also use it as a motivator to say, how do I get to where I want? What's that plan that I got to create to get to where I want to go?
What I'm hearing is let your faith be bigger than your fears,
Yes, that's a great way.
right?
That's a great way to put that long story.
Yeah. Yeah, and another thing that I heard was be strategic,
Yeah.
right? And being strategic requires patience, requires keeping an eye on the long-term goal and planning the short-term tasks that
Yep.
are going to take you to get there.
Yep. And
Wow.
and built into all that, right? When you actually put forward action, when you actually put into the universe what you want, there's that there's that magic that's also introduced into
Mm.
all that, right? Like manifestation, right? You can plan
Yeah.
for everything, but tell God your plans and God will show you, right? So uh, that's why for me, if I just have options, if I know here's option A, here's option B, here's option C, then no matter what does come my way, I know that I have some way of handling and juggling the opportunity and fear as it comes because I have these different options in place. So um I do believe in the mystery of manifestations. I do believe faith is a great indicator and driver. And planning and having plans in place doesn't take away any of the magic, but it gives you opportunities to say, what is that magic going to do for me?
Girl, and I'm so glad you opened the door to talk about spirituality and manifestation because I was about to ask you if you have any spiritual practice to, because I believe that we are mind, body, and soul, and spirituality has been my safety net throughout, the past 30 years of my life. And every time that I've fallen, I've lost, quote unquote, all my money, I've changed careers, I've, lost my partners, my significant others, lost in the sense that like it ended. Um, every time that these things have happened, I have the comfort of knowing that God will catch me every time. So, how is it for you?
Yeah, I would say that my mom and I talk about it all the time because of all the moves and transitions and work and stuff, and even for her, the transition she's gone through in life. And she always says, God will always provide. No matter what, God
Hmm.
will always provide. And there's always little instances that remind me that God is there, and whatever God you believe in, there is a faith, there is an energy that
Hmm.
is um keeping me safe and secure. And really, all these opportunities that I've gotten, it's not necessarily because I'm lucky. And sometimes I do say, hey, I'm really lucky that I am where I am. But I also have to remember that there's two things that have guided me into that. One is the opportunities have presented themselves, and I've had to ask myself, is that the right opportunity or not? And second, those opportunities have presented themselves to me because one, I've put it in the universe. That's where I want to go next. God is heard, and God has prepared me to get to that next spot. In some instances, it might not have come in the moment that I wanted,
Hmm.
but they've come nonetheless. And so I do believe that there is a energy that is pushing and pulling me into that next space, and I'm very thankful for it and very grateful for it. And like my mom says, God will provide. And so it's just, you just have to make sure you're ready and have those plans in place that when that does happen, you are ready to move into that next opportunity.
How do you know, though, when an opportunity is right for you or not until you live it?
I think you internally, I
Hmm.
think and sometimes we don't listen very well, and we
Right,
put ourselves in situations where we're like, crap, right? Um, but because you have faith and because you have all these plans laid out, you do find new trajectories to get out of that muck, right? So you find ways to get out of it. But I think I think we are all beings with energy, and we know when the energy is not right, it's not leveled, it's not vibrating at the frequency that makes you feel comfortable and good. You know it. And so that's why I say the opportunity might happen, but it's up to you whether you take it or not. And just because you don't take one opportunity doesn't mean it's one and done, right? There might be
right,
another opportunity. I think it's really, are you ready and comfortable for that opportunity? And I think in either case, God's going to provide, right?
right.
He's going to tell you whether it's the right opportunity or not.
One thing that keeps screaming in my ear is you have been stepping out of your comfort zone over and over and over again. Is
Yeah.
this accurate?
Yeah, I think so.
Very cool, very cool. Because that's where the growth is,
Yeah.
right? And even though there is an energy God will provide and you have a plan, I think it's important to state that without the skills and the
True.
foundation, like you're not gonna you're not gonna do well in that opportunity that presented itself. The opportunity might not even present itself for you.
Right. Right. You have to get to that point. And I think sometimes we confuse experience with longevity, right? I've been here in
Oh,
this space for like a long time, but did you really capture and cultivate the experience that you needed?
oh, I
And so I think
love
sometimes we
that.
confuse that. Yeah,
Well, talk a little bit more about that, will you?
sure. So, sometimes
That
in
is
order
so
to move,
insightful. Yeah.
Yeah, in order to move up, you got to have experience, right?
Right.
And experience has nothing to do with timelines. You can gain a lot of experience in a very short amount of time just based on the opportunities and challenges you have at the job. So, for example, right, the job that I have now, I had never been in an airport space at all, but technology is technology. And I've got over 2 decades worth of technology experience. And I had to move that into the airport realm. And I had to learn airports, right? So I had to learn the business of the airport so that I can apply the technology to the airports. So now I've been here 2 years, 8 months ish. And the question now is, hey, have I capitalized on all of that learning that I've done to say that I can expertly talk about airport business and technologies? I might not have been able to do that in the first 2 or 3 months, but now I think I'm at a level where I'm comfortable knowing the business of airports and using my experience in technology to be able to say, hey, I'm an expert in airports and technology. Some folks have been in the sector for years and years and years and years, and
Mhm.
they still may not be qualified to do the same thing, to say, hey, I'm an expert in airports or technology, because they haven't capitalized on the opportunity. Yet in the back of their mind, they're thinking, I've been here for 10 years. Of course, I'm an expert. I've been here for 10 years. That longevity doesn't mean much if you
Mm,
haven't capitalized on the experience, right?
right. Hmm.
And so I think we sometimes think to ourselves, I've been here for so long. Why isn't my next opportunity come?
Right.
Why haven't I been able to take that next leap? I think it's sometimes because we forget we haven't built up the experience level that we need yet. We haven't really capitalized on all the opportunities and challenges that we've had so that we're ready for that next opportunity. We're just assuming that my longevity is the same as having the experience.
And I keep hearing intentionality.
Yeah.
Intentionality. I'm a cat. Not Frank.
Hi,
Frank.
kitty.
Frank. He helps support my interviews. Um, so I also keep hearing intentionality. It seems that you are very intentional in everything that you do. Very intense and intentional. Did I hear it correctly?
Yeah, I try, right? I really try because for me, one of the things to go back to one of the questions you asked about, faith and all of that stuff. One of the things that I truly believe in and have experienced over and over again is karma, right?
Mm,
When I was growing up, if I did something sneaky and bad, I mean, I got found out like right away, right? I
right.
got caught right away. And so I believe that karma for me, when I do something wrong and bad, karma is going to get me right away. Um, And so, what I want to do instead, what that pushes me to do is to be better. Because if I can be better, then I can provide better to my friends and my family and to my acquaintances and stuff like that, and to my job and to my coworkers, right? And so, I have to be intentional. I have to say, if I want to do, for example, a project, if I want to get that project out, here are the expectations. Here is the timeline. Here's where I want us to go with it. Here's where I want to go next. Sometimes I may not verbally express that very well because I think sometimes in my head I have a grander vision than I can actually speak to or find the right words for it. But I am intentional in the sense that if I do something, what good is going to come out of it? What are those
Mm.
consequences that are going to benefit others for it? And so I don't think I'm just intentional for myself. I think I'm intentional for my environment as well.
Wow, that is so like well-rounded, right? It's so broad. I don't know a lot of people who think like you do, right? Who see the bigger picture of your impact, not only on
Yeah,
the people that you directly interact with, but also the environment that you're in, the community
yeah,
that you're in, the job that you're in. That's
yeah.
amazing. Do you have a spiritual practice that helps you strengthen this faith in God and yourself?
So I grew up Muslim, and so a lot of my rituals and practices are centered around the Muslim faith. But one of the things that is very important to me is prayer. And I've always told people faith is very personal, right? So how I practice and how I believe might be very different than somebody else of the same religion or same faith. But for me, prayer is very, very important. So I go to sleep praying and I wake up praying. And over the past couple of years, I'm trying, and that's a very loosely said trying, to incorporate more meditation, right? I
Mm,
want to be more impactful with my prayer by meditating and enveloping myself into that feeling. But to me, repetitive prayer, right, chants, things like that are very important. And I go to sleep and I wake up saying prayers, just because it's important to me. I think it sets the tone of my day really well.
hmm
Sometimes when I pray, I feel like I'm casting a spell for my protection and for my goodness.
Yeah.
And so if I can start the day that way and end the day that way, that's very important to me.
Words are our wands,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what about self-care? How do you take care of your mind, body, soul? You said prayer. What are other things that you do? Because self-care, especially for a woman in a position of power, right, that you are and you've been for quite a few years, how do you nurture yourself aside from cooking and traveling? Like your day to day, like you can't
I
travel
know,
every
right?
day, right? So in your day to day, what's your self-care routine like?
Um, I want to say it's more introspective, right? So my self-care every day is more, waking up with intentionality. I not just along with, I do my prayers, but then I also have like 4 sentences of affirmations that I say to myself.
Hmm
And so for me, self-care is really improving upon my own confidence and my own self-esteem. So outwardly, right, it's making sure that I dress well, I put on makeup, I try to look nice.
hmm
But internally, it's really self-care for me is really affirming that I am a strong person. I am a kind person. I am a beautiful person, that I am divinely guided. I am blessed. Those things, taking moments to internally recognize and appreciate those things, I think is self-care for me. Now, I do all the other things too. Like, if I really want to get into it, I have to get my pedicure once a month, right? Like, even if
Yeah.
I'm broke, the one thing I will do is get a pedicure, right? Because your feet are so important,
I love that. I love it.
right?
Yes. Give me
Yeah.
more. Yes.
Yeah. So taking the time to do that. But it's, over I go through like these peaks and valleys of doing materialistic things or things like because I'll find something I really, really like and I'll do it, and then I'll find something else, or then I'll get bored, or my confidence takes a hit. And so I kind of dwindle a little bit and I kind of enclose myself a little bit. And so I won't do those outwardly things anymore just because I don't feel good on the inside, right? So then it's rebuilding the inside so that I can do things again on the outside. So a lot of the self-care for me is that inner
hmm
affirmation to remind myself that I am worthy. And I think like I said, there's peaks and valleys. We all go through it. We all go through periods of doubt and we all go through periods of some type of depression or sadness or missing or something is just not comfortable, right? You don't feel aligned anymore. You don't feel like you're in your
hmm
frequency anymore. And for me, I have to sit in that until I do find that frequency again. And then it's capturing that and really affirming that, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. I am a good person. I am doing the right thing. And so I think that's the self-care that I really want to practice and be more mindful of.
Thank you for all that. I am going to ask you what are the four things that you would say to yourself every day. But I think that more importantly right now is um, what impacts your self-confidence?
Um, uh, Sometimes,
I told you I was gonna get personal.
I
You
know, right?
said there were no off-limit topics.
I know.
And you're like,
So
damn.
I know. I think it's my own internalization, right? I'll come through a conversation and I'll ask myself, did I really say that?
Mm,
Did I really make sense? Did I sound stupid or silly, right? It's that self-doubt that
mm,
really, and I have to like remind myself, okay, even though I might have thought I said something stupid, the person that I was talking to or the people I are talking to, they might think the same thing as well, or they might not. And so why am I really questioning when my intent was good, right? I had good
Hmm.
intentions when I spoke to people, or when I speak to people, when I say things, I stick my foot in my mouth all the time. But there's always a little bit of that doubt that am I good enough? Am I smart enough? Am I in the right spot? I'm also I pick up on people's feelings a lot. So I might transfer some of their own feelings onto me, right? Some of their own anger, some of their own insecurities. I might just pull it into myself. And so that'll also kind of drive me or drag me down. But I think a lot of it is just my own self-doubt. And it kind of goes back to that day in college where I was told
Mm-hmm.
engineering is not for you, right? And so I think that's sometimes why or in the beginning of our conversation, I was like, I don't know what my life would have been if I'd stayed in engineering. Not that I don't have gratefulness and I understand the blessings that I've had in this journey so far, but that always just drives a little bit of self-doubt, right? Because if I wasn't good enough for engineering, am I good enough for where I'm at now? And so
The
that can
facts
kind of pull me
speaks for
down.
themselves. Yeah, the facts speak for themselves. You are
Yeah.
where you are now, so you are good enough for sure.
Oh, I know. And I know that, right? So we all have that two frame of
Yeah,
reference, I think. Sometimes it's that whole it's like that image, right? Where you have the two angels, right? Or you have an
mm,
angel and a devil on your shoulders,
right.
right? And they're both going back and forth and they're talking, one is negative, one is positive, and who are you going to give the most credence to?
Hmm.
And so a lot of that is that struggle between the two. Because sometimes you do have to understand, I might have done something really stupid. Now, what am I
Right,
going to do to learn from it and not
right.
do it again?
Hmm.
Right. So sometimes you have to have that. But on the other hand, do I really need to say that what I did was stupid? Or do I need to tell myself what I did was maybe not of the caliber that I should have done it at? And really, how am I going to just be better for the next time? Right.
Yeah.
Words are magic, words have power. So that speak is very important. But there are times where I just sit in my own muck and I'm just like,
And giving yourself grace is so important.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. You're the fearless badass. You're like, oh my God, I love this woman so much. I am like so grateful
Oh,
that you have been here with us, sharing some of you and some of your day with us. Would you have any final insights to now, particularly the women that are listening to us, about taking leaps of faith, being in positions that are male dominant? Do you have insights for these women on how they can, step into the next level of their being and rise?
yeah. Two things. I have two things to say. One, build a community.
Hmm.
Don't do it on your own. There's no point in us trying to conquer the world on our own. We're not going to be able to do it. Find a community of people that are going to, one, support you, two, enable you. So they're going to have the tools that they can teach you so that you can get to that next level. And three, that are just going to love on you forever, right? Find your community. It can be one person, two people, three people, or a gang of people. It doesn't matter, but find your community and and if you need, have multiple communities, right? Of people that are just willing to support and push you to that next level and people that you can learn from, right? So build a community, build a good community.
Hmm.
Two, have a plan. Just whether it's in your head, okay, fine, it's in your head, but try and formulate it into some kind of action or task that you can do. Get it on a piece of paper, whether it's a piece of scrap paper or it's on your computer, it's on your phone, whatever it is, just get it out because when you let it out of your brain, you're giving that image of yourself and you're giving that pathway that you want to be on energy. And we want to give it energy so that you can start moving that way up to there. So get it, find your community and create a plan.
Wow. How inspirational. This conversation has been nothing short of amazing, and I'm so glad that I brought you on this podcast, Rishma. Thank you so much for being here today.
No, thank you, Camila. I so appreciate you asking me to do this and I loved being here. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And everybody, if you've liked this episode, please share, like, subscribe. You never know who's out there who needs to hear this inspirational force of nature that is Rishma. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and until next time, namaste.